Welcome to the Reconstructing Inclusion podcast. My name is Amri Johnson, your host. Season 3 of the Reconstructing Inclusion podcast will be focused on opening up dialogue about a way forward in the diversity and inclusion space that's focused more on who we are than what we ascribe to one another. It will be about shifting patterns and practices we've come to adhere to in the space, examining them with fresh eyes in the current climate, about principles the work has revolved around and why and what principles we might need to consider anew, about exploring our thinking, how we are making meaning of our workplaces and the world around us in the most curious ways we can, how we listen with skill, openly learn, create the conditions that allow colleagues to know they matter. Welcome to the Reconstructing Inclusion podcast. This is Amri, your host. I am delighted to have back in the studio. This is a story that I'm not going to make too long. Peter and I met over the Christmas kind of winter holidays at the end of December, and we had technical stuff all over the place. First, Peter was not in his normal setting, and then we got into this deep discussion for like almost over an hour, I think it was. And then I looked up and I didn't record it. So
it was good times.
Going and telling all my friends, that's the best podcast I've ever had that I didn't record. And I can't say it's the best that I didn't record. It was one of the best I've ever had. And I'm looking forward, Peter, to making it happen again. And I'll have Peter introducing himself in a second. But I first want to say, welcome to the Reconstructing Inclusion podcast, Peter.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Yes, and I hope this is not the last time, even though it would be the third time again if we did it again. Peter, we always start our conversations with a couple questions. And the first one is a favorite song or movie that you go to over and over again.
Oh, I think these are movies that you can watch whenever they're on TV or whatever. I'm really into this movie from the 80s called Repo Man. And it actually has one of my favorite songs in it, which is like the song at the end called Real 10. And what I really like I like 80s movies a lot in general because I feel like, especially the sci-fi, I saw a lot of stuff coming down the pipe that's hitting us now. Wow. And so there's a lot of stuff in there about what's it mean to be a person when the world's run by computers. And I think Repo Man is a really good example of that, where the protagonist is like outside of society and there are other people outside of society as an identity, but he doesn't feel connected with them. It's almost like a modern Catching the Ride kind of situation. Yeah. I'll watch that movie every time it's on. It's just such a unique, enjoyable film.
Very cool. All right. And the second one is a book or a person that has influenced or inspired you personally or professionally in your life or career journey.
I read Richard Feynman, the physicist's autobiography, and I am not like a physics person. Like I can keep up with some of that stuff. And it really changed my mind because the way he thought about systems, right? And the fact that he was thinking of, we have natural order and society order. And it really twists my head around into things where science isn't mutually exclusive from culture and art and things of that nature.
I still secretly, I don't tell people this, but I'm telling you now that I look at a lot of videos from Feynman and the stories he's told about how his dad, and I have a 7-year-old, so like how he started seeing the world. And I think that was in at least one of his books where he talks about his father quite a bit. I became a big fan probably over the past, 10 years. So I didn't know him that well before, but now I look out. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah. He has a lecture in the 80s about what is in a computer, and it's still completely relevant today. And the most important thing, I put it like in all my slides to clients, is computers are mostly file systems and they're usually done wrong. Because they're done the way you don't think they should be done. I love that perspective of they just name things wrong, but it's all there. All the data we need is there. It's just in the wrong order.
That's so funny. Very cool. So Peter, we're going to jump in. Can you share your background? You have a very unique background. Can you share your background with us and the
Yeah.
audience about who you are and parallel your
Yeah.
work and your life
Sure.
you are seeking to create in the world?
Sure. So I have a consultancy called Toilville. And at Toilville, I've been in tech 30 some odd years. When I was a teenager, one of my first jobs was working at the public library, teaching people how to use the internet. And this was the 90s. So almost no one knew how to use the internet then. And I think that has been like the connecting thread for all my different jobs and things I've done is the intersection of people getting things done and how computers can help or hinder that. And so my consultancy does a lot of work, especially for the last 15 years. I've been working in a field called conversational AI, which is how you talk to a computer with natural language versus saying, Alexa, turn on the light, or things like that. And that has greatly accelerated, obviously, in the last couple of years with things like ChatGPT and Copilot and all that. And I think because of my background, starting out like customer service in the trenches, I didn't join a tech company, like a startup company, until my late 20s. And I think that has always made me like enough of a outsider that I interrogate things from a real populist point of view of what are computers? What you think you're so good? Show me. And I really understand that perspective from people and work in an era where the cart is leading the horse, where technology is telling us the way things are and way AI is going to change every industry and all that. And the people who run the industry and make stuff have some words to say about that. And so I try to help my clients use what's useful and not feed a machine that's out to take their job or steal their individuality and all that.
I wasn't going to go here immediately, but when you said there are some people in tech that perpetuate the idea that the cart is leading the horse, that seems to be something that you don't necessarily agree with. Am I off the mark with that?
Obviously, roads are important, right? But if I am not needing the road or doesn't go where I want to go, it doesn't matter how nice the road is. And I think technology has forgotten that because their chief consumer right now is venture capital. And which means when's the last startup that where the people stuck around for years and years in the way that like, okay, that's their product, like a Craigslist kind of tech company or things like that, where it's just they're not like trying to make sneakers or and then jet planes and all that stuff. And I think a lot of people, especially those of my generation, have forgotten how to grow and build products. And so people, as a result, and a lot of my clients have 9 or 10 different things that is crucial to their business, and they're made completely unaware of each other's abilities and shortcomings, and they navigate that throughout their day. And so a lot of my work is, okay, what can we fire? Like, how do we get the stack simpler and make it easier so you can get to your business, whether you're a doctor or a plumber or anything in between? And a lot of people are just like using stuff because it worked the first time and they don't have time to find the 8 other ways that could be better and all that. And one of the benefits of things like AI is you can try things out quickly and you can figure things faster. And so I think that is like a blessing and a curse, right? Because a lot of times technology will make you work faster, but not necessarily better. And I think there's also, you need to find out if I can do things 10 times faster, what if I stay at the same speed and do it 5 times better? And I think that is like a hard
That's an
position.
interesting distinction because most people are just focused on faster right now. So this whole efficiency thing, it seems like it's about speed, but it doesn't seem like it's about excellence. And that's a tension for me. I'm a writer and sometimes do want to go faster when I'm doing marketing and sales stuff and just close business. But when I'm writing, it's my space and time to think. But when I'm marketing something and I'm spending a lot of time writing it, it doesn't serve me. But it's a tension for me. How are you dealing with that tension? Because you're a creator. You're a maker. And makers, there's a craft to it and there's a level of excellence that you want to have in it. How do you rectify that with your clients, with your business?
I really try to frame it in what they're familiar with. For example, I have a client who does insurance brokerage, and they used to work for a big guy, and they left the big guy because they're sick of being undercut by the big guy's dumb decisions that seem disconnected to his clients' engagements. And now the problem is all that infrastructure is gone. And so he has to make the infrastructure by himself, and he's copying pasting emails and the things and all that. And what we're building for him is, okay, you come to the meeting, you take as long as the meeting takes. You don't take notes, you're not writing things down, you're just talking like I am to you. and then the transcription makes it into the notes, into the system, into the task. And I think that is material better use of his ability, because his brand is sitting down and talking to people and being there on a first name basis and knowing their kids and what sports they're in and all that stuff. And it's not how well he is as transcribing notes and taking things and putting it into a database.
Exactly.
And so the fact that tech, in a large part, like especially SaaS services, try to be like Walmart to people as opposed to being a nice tailored suit. And that's just because it's hard to do all that at scale. But also now we have the ability to like make frameworks that you can tailor something incredibly bespoke, and it's not going to cost $100,000 and take 6 months. And I think that is like the opportunity people have. And you can use AI and not use AI. Like you can build the software and make software applications and turn it off. And so that's the other, I think, key to the puzzle is that I think a lot of AI right now is underpriced, and they're going to jack the rates once we're hooked. So build software. Software's worked for 70 years. And I tell people all the time, more about your industry than I know about computers. So if I give you a little bit of computers, you're going to make a better software application than Excel or any of those other big company things because of the way you like to work.
Sure.
And I think that's like the untapped potential now. So you could just take, like at my company, we don't have Slack. We have Matrix with bridges of Slack, and all goes into one place. And if the client wants to be on Slack, fine. I don't want to load Slack if I don't have to.
If you don't have to pay for it. I just got rid of my Slack. Actually, I started thinking about it after our last conversation, but I just finally did it. I kept the free version, I guess. That's about it. Yeah. You made a really interesting comparison between a bespoke suit and Walmart. I don't think I've ever heard that comparison made. But you don't have to be all things to all people. You need to give people what they need, and that's going to serve them more than an all-purpose. Is that what I'm hearing?
No, yeah. I think, for example, if you use like Microsoft Copilot and Excel, there's almost nothing like I don't know a lot of accountants. So most people I use Excel are using it for anything but a spreadsheet.
Right.
And so all the Copilot tools for the first 2 years of it were focused on scenarios that were only around math and figures and all that. And so they were like ignoring the desire line that goes through their product. And that's a decision any product is allowed to make when they own it. But I think when people use stuff, they abuse it in a way that's not intended. Like I always think about, I'll stick with Excel, like during the COVID pandemic, they kept a list of all the people in the UK who got COVID in the spreadsheet. And they ran out of tables and out of rows because it only has 255,000 something rows. Right. And it's just, and it was like, it would take like 25 minutes to open it and add stuff. And it's just, why didn't they use the database? So the person who makes the database was sick. And so we had to get going, and Excel, everyone has Excel. And I think a lot of software is like that. You just, you pick something off the shelf and you're like, well, this is good enough. And you go to war with it. And I think that was like a real eye opener for me about technology being like, you can do things in a Moleskine notebook, or you could do things on a whiteboard, or you could do things in WordPress, or they're all just systems for organizing and structuring process, and they're places for you to do the work. And so I think like when people talk about, oh, you're a Mac or PC guy or whatever, it's like, I think it's like the same as, are you a boot cut or a baggy pants, a jean coat guy? It's just like they're pants. They look cool, hopefully, and they keep you warm and not too hot. And I think a lot of technology is like that too. So how do we use all these tools in a way that is just, I'm not beta testing something for some eggheads who don't understand my business. Yeah. And how do I get just enough value of it where I could do more things in a day that I don't want to do? Like, I don't want it to write my emails for me. I like writing emails. I like reading my emails. And there's other things like that. I think I would never use AI to make art. I have a designer, and I love the way he makes art because I could talk to him and he understands what I'm meaning. And also he like runs with it in a way that's not in my instructions.
That's the creative energy. And that brings me to a question. I took a quote from Sarah Connor from the Terminator 2 movie. And she said, if a machine can learn the value of human life, maybe we can too. I call that the Terminator test. And so Peter, you've been inside of Microsoft. You haven't talked about that much, but are we designing systems with humanity as the superset, or just optimizing for particular, I guess I can call it identity subsets, particularly things that are just tech related versus human related?
I think everything made by people reflects the environment which is birthed from, right? And so like when you use a product from a company like Google or Microsoft or Amazon, even if it tries to be like independent and agnostic, and they're like, yeah, we don't take opinions, the culture which it makes stuff. And I think people in a big company, either you compartmentalize, you do your code switching and you keep your thoughts to yourself and you do the work, or you fight for the things you believe in, or you leave. And I think there's also like a lot of self-justification of like things like monthly active users and what is the people who've gone with your product versus the people who left your product say about your product that goes uninterrogated, because it's, especially in publicly traded companies, it's quarter to quarter business. And it's hard to say, here's my quality bar and this is the hill I'll die on, when it's like there's no real reward for dying on that hill if you're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. And you don't have enough skin in the game to make it worth your while.
Yeah.
You said in a podcast that I reviewed in preparation that we need diverse voices for innovation. So in your conversational AI work, when clients brief you on what they want to do, what they want to build, do they typically say, we want to serve humans better, or do they say we want to target our customer base better? And does that framing shape whether I guess the AI passed the Terminator test? Like when people ask you for something, like sometimes they're just like, get it faster so I can let more people go, or so I can, how is that kind of playing out with your customers that want to go deeper into AI?
Like for a long time, the biggest customers in conversational AI obviously were like contact centers, people management stuff, front desk operations. And there are real problems in that, like that they just throw mountains of people at, and with varying levels of efficacy. And so there clearly is like a desire, and they call it containment, which is basically, can I solve the problem without getting a person to pick up a phone? And there's real cost to that. Like every time a person picks up a phone, it's $5. And you do 150 phone calls a day in a room full of 200 people, and you do the math.
Right.
And so, and I really try to reframe the problem into absolutely you can fire everyone in the world and have a computer pick up the phone now. That is that good for your line of business? If I can't get someone on the phone at Hilton or Delta Airlines or whatever for any scenario whatsoever, that is probably bad. That's going to have legal outcomes, all that stuff. And so there's that friction of, okay, we can't have no customer service, but what can we get away with? And so you get this little FAFO kind of FOMO tide of war with people with technologies. But I prefer to think of things like, I've worked in call centers. I've worked in call centers that were like, and there'd be like klaxons that go off if the queue time goes more than 20 minutes, and it's some dystopian sci-fi movie around you at all times. And but there was people there that were generally really good at their jobs, and those are the people that I think of as, one, how do we protect them and how do we get them amplified where they have very smart, intuitive minds that understand the whole business in a way that probably people in the C-level don't. And how do we get them where they're not answering questions like, what is your home office phone number?
Right.
And what is the address and the office hours all
Right.
day?
And they handle the things that have more complexity or nuance that's needed, and with a different level of context. Because what I found with, even as I've been trying to build some of my own custom LLMs and systems for the businesses that I'm a part of, what I find is to consistently update context is almost impossible, because I'm coming with new context all the time. And I don't want to sound naive, but like, there's just certain things that I come up with that maybe are somewhere, but they aren't being synthesized like I have synthesized them in that particular moment for a particular client or what have you. So that's always been one of my biggest challenges. You've made this reference, Peter, to something that I think is quite interesting called Devon Avenue. And I'm going to let you explain what Devon Avenue is. Also, in my book, I quoted an anthropologist named Nick Seaver, and he studied algorithmic systems. And he found that by design, they're done by collective authorship. So it's a lot of people contributing code with different goals across time, and it makes the outputs somewhat unpredictable, even to those that are inside of the organization. It can be a bit of a black box. So you've built governance, or have built a governance framework to create what you call a single unified code base with consistent patterns. I can't say that I fully understand what that means, but I'll let you answer it. Let me ask this question as it relates to inclusion. If algorithms have collective authorship, how do we ensure that collective includes Devon Avenue? You're right about all kinds of people knowing something rather than just reproducing what might be homogeneity of whoever has commit access, that has access to the system. Is governance about consistency, or is it about encoding diversity of perspectives?
So for a long time, I think diversity has been considered a structural cost, right? As a cost to bear. And as such, it gets cut off of things for austerity purposes. So you'll say things like, man, the Rooney rule in the NFL, it's like, I guess we just make everyone interview people of color for head coaching positions, but we can't make them hire them. Like that'd be crazy. And I think a lot of things like get mired down in process. And in our last conversation, we talked about, I'm from the northwest side of Chicago, West Ridge neighborhood, and I live by this street called Devon Avenue. Devon Avenue, my grandparents both came to the United States in the 20s. And that was like the Jewish neighborhood, this area. But since then, it's become the Indian neighborhood and the Polish neighborhood and the Serbian neighborhood and the Pakistani neighborhood and the Iranian neighborhood and the Korean neighborhood. And like almost every block is, if you were to start walking east from Israel, it would be almost like the same geographical through line across the world, across Asia, all the way to Lake Michigan. And so what that means for me as a kid is I was a white male in school that was 60% female and only 25% Caucasian. And I didn't think of that in hindsight. It was just the neighborhood. Like my first teacher was Caucasian. My first grade teacher was Korean, not Korean American, Korean, national, who moved here and had an accent. And Miss Kendrick was my second grade teacher, and Miss Martello from the Philippines was my fourth grade teacher. Diversity to me was like, this is the world we live in. And then I grew up and I moved to the South and I moved to places on the East Coast. And I'm like, oh yeah, there are places that are like extremely monocultural.
Right.
And so that kind of gives me perspective too when I go into a company and I see everyone on the company looks like either they try and do like a United Colors of Benetton kind of thing, and they have people in strategic places, but maybe culturally they're monocultural. And then there's people that are just like, oh yeah, we are a true global company and global things matter and all that. And there's like a walk the walk, talk the talk thing. And so when we come to automation, and I talk to my automation tool that we call Spellwork, and we're going to start releasing that to the public in the next couple of weeks. Spellwork doesn't presume like other algorithms that our algorithm is the best. It's just ours. It's like the lens how we view the world. And when you get to the boundary of the ending of Toilville and you go into your world, that's where your algorithm begins. And our job is to hydrate your algorithm with all the information that represents our algorithm. And then we just translate it in the middle like a Rosetta Stone. And I think that today we have things like APIs that do this. And conversational AI was kind of leading to this moment where I go up to a microphone and I say, I really like some Taco Bell for lunch. And it goes through the microphone into the computer system, and to the Taco Bell restaurant, they order the stuff. It goes to the guy who delivers it, brings it to me. And I think everything is like that. It's just either you're talking to machines, talk to people. And if that is the thing that is in the middle of every conversation, I could be talking to you and this video might not even be real. It could be, you could be catfishing me from any country in the world. And if that's materially important to the conversation, that's a problem. And if it's immaterial to the conversation, that's fine. If I'm talking to someone who wants to have an avatar of a cat ears or Star Trek, and it has nothing to do with the conversation we're talking about, I'm fine with that. And I think getting over that thing and there's a lot of things like, if I said Black Lives Matters, or if I said all things like Free Palestine, that engenders provokes a response because people have opinions one side or the other. For
whatever reason.
For what it matters. Yeah, for what it matters. Black lives do matter, and I do want to free Palestine. And I just want to make it clear I'm not doing both sides. And okay, so how do we work together to do things? So in the past, they talk about, oh yeah, it's just both sidisms and stuff like that. Well, there's coalitions of people, right? And I remember when 9/11 happened in my neighborhood and the Muslim community was under attack by Chuds, the Jews came together and the Chinese people came together and African Americans came together because they understood the threat was bigger than that. And when you look at Minnesota and you see what's happening there, where people are coming together because they realize at the end of the day, we're all Minnesotans or we're all Americans or we're all this. And so bounding all the way back to like algorithms are just like the philosopher Mentor Echo said, you can't do a one-to-one map of the empire. So you can never make a map that's as big as the map of the thing you're mapping. Most databases are what? 128 items. That is your entire life. It boiled down to a computer system. And so when we're talking about bias and we're talking about access to things, those are people who fill in the gaps. Like I remember when I was in high school, the controversy was about the SAT had a question about which of the 4 places can you go cash your paycheck? Option 1, a bank. Option 2, credit exchange. Option 3, a liquor store. Option 4, something else. And liquor store was wrong. I'm down the street from 5 liquor stores that can cash a paycheck right now. And it's 2 a.m. And so there was no one in the room who wrote that question who lived in any modern American city that had liquor stores that cash checks behind. And I think that those kind of things are happening all the time. So when we're talking about hallucinations, they're almost like bias at scale because there's no one around to read and say, oh yeah, that law thing you cited in court doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And we talk about agentic technologies replacing human when they can't even defend themselves against you telling them to say something incorrect. Like you can force them to believe anything and they'll apologize for it. And it's just, so to bring it all back, this kind of boils down to there needs to be someone in the room who raises their hand and asks a question that people are afraid to ask or don't know to ask because they're insulated by their experiences in a way that is not to judge them. They just don't have that experience.
Yeah, exactly. And and you don't have to judge them. I pretty much have gone through probably my 40s and into my 50s, assuming that a lot of time I'm wrong. Now, I don't like to admit that out loud because I like being right. However, I know, and I have cultivated, whatever you want to call it, in my way of thinking that I'm probably wrong some percentage of what I'm saying. And my goal is to get closer to reality as I think. And so I'm okay with being wrong, but it's really, right now it seems like nobody wants to be wrong about anything. And that brings me to my next question, because you asked what I would say is an essential question in one interview that I watched on a podcast of you. And you asked the question, who's responsible when the decision is wrong? And when it comes to AI, when it comes to machines. And I have a framework called the cost framework. The first element is care, which is an acknowledgement of interdependence between, in the case, because I used it in the chapter on AI and inclusion, the interdependence between the algorithm makers and the consumers of whatever they're coding. So when you're building conversational AI for clients, at what point in the process do you discuss potential harms? Is it part of the initial scope? Does it come up when something breaks?
It's the second question, right?
Yeah.
The first question is what you want to do.
Okay.
And the second question is what happens when that doesn't happen, right? And so the question is, we want people to order tacos via Facebook. Okay. And what happens if the order's wrong, right? Or what happens if the food comes bad or if it's late or it's cold or it never shows up or they overcharge you? Who do they talk to? Are we building this in the bot? Are we building this in a phone number that they call? And I think anything that skips that is like a demo, right? Because that is just how the way things work. If I was building a building and it had a bunch of rules for fire regulations, you would have to have all those in place before they let you inhabit the building. And I think technology should be held to the same standard. And so a lot of times I get a pushback from people and they're like, we don't have to do all this. I'm like, is this going to be used by anyone not at this table who doesn't have a financial incentive from this company to use it? And the answer is yes, then we got to work on it now. And I think that is just something you have to like fight for. And that's a hill to die on. I've been in meetings, go back to the taco analogy. They launched the product and it had horrible customer satisfaction scores. And they were talking on meeting for an hour and they were just like, oh yeah, maybe we'll get better AI. We need to get more training. And I got on mute like 45 minutes. What happens when the order's wrong? And they're like, oh, they got to call the store. It's like, where in the bot does it tell them they got to call the store? It doesn't. So you're telling me that this thing could take your credit card money, but it can't refund anything and it can't send you fresh food. Yes.
It seems so common sense, right?
Yeah. It's just you're so focused on the deliverable.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
hard, and there's no incentive to raise your hand and create more work.
Of course. Yeah, yeah.
But you have to have an understanding of what is the process today of the thing you're emulating to like, and if it doesn't have a one-to-one mapping of that, at least in a superficial level of, and this is what customer service is, right? Because customer service exists because they couldn't build software for every single possible scenario. So you have to call someone who manually goes in the system and changes it. And we're doing this now at scale. We're trying to customer service the entirety of society. And you want to have a knob that gives you pizza and a knob that gives you justice for all and all that stuff. And so how do you build a one-to-one map of the world then? And I think the answer is that you don't. And everyone builds their own one-to-one map and of their life, which is smaller and maybe more concentric. And then you find the Venn diagrams of people and we get together and, hey, you, me, and everyone else who has diabetes in America, we're going to buy insulin as a group, as a company. And so that should make it basically free, right? If we buy an order in bulk and we don't have to have insurance and we'll just like, instead of paying $100 a month, we'll put into this bill and then we'll have a fund that we can invest in the market and use it to pay for other medical insurance or something. Like no startups are interested in that idea, right? There's no startups around there because everything is interested in capturing capital and capturing jobs. But what are you going to do for all your startups? Like how many rides Uber going to sell when no one has to get an Uber to go to work?
I've been really struggling with that whole idea where obviously these layoffs right now in tech are not because people aren't performing. And they're not all because of AI. Maybe they're because they've spent too much money on compute, but it's also maybe that they overhired 4 years ago and now they have an excuse to course correct. But there's no sense that's made for me is that you're going to have less people making money and therefore you're going to sell more stuff. I don't understand that logic. Like when you talk to people in tech, how do they make sense of that?
I think they got their heads in the sand in a lot of ways. You can't have more people inside the Amazon warehouse than outside the Amazon warehouse. And I think people don't understand how society works on a level because if you've worked your entire life in tech, you've not worked a real job, I think.
Wait, Peter.
If you worked your entire...
These are supposed to be the best jobs. What are you talking about?
Okay, so when you're in a job, and I think like my first job, my real first job, I worked at a golf course. Never once played a game of golf, still haven't to this day. I worked there for 3 summers. And I worked at golf course and I was a starter. And so my job was to make people, your tee time's 9:00, you're off the tee by 9:05. And I developed a system and I became appreciated by regulars and disliked by some people. And that's just a system you figure out as a person. But in tech, you never have like full control over a system where you're thrown in the deep end of the pool when you figure it out. And I think that is the purpose of like team jobs and low skill jobs is like they're hiring someone with just enough ingenuity to convince bluff their way through an interview and they'll figure it out. And so go in the tech world, where do you learn the proprioception of planning that is entirely up to you to execute and seize to the end? And I think that is the role of any junior person, any career, anywhere, is figuring out not how to do a job, but how to do work. And fast forward to now you're making the operating system for work. You have to build like this structural process to help people do work. And you've never worked a day in your life in the way that I described. You never had to plan something from nothing. And that could be writing a book, or that could be creating Slack channels, or that could be any number of scenarios where you're looking at an empty field and you imagine a mall. And that is the kind of the problem of our era is, okay, so if we're laying people off, they're doing 2 things. One, they're laying off the high level guys who've been around for 20 years. And I described a dire thing in tech, but you do pick up things, old dog knows tricks and all that stuff. And there's institutional knowledge out the door.
Absolutely. Right? It's tacit too. It's not something that you can easily just pass on.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the other end of it is you're not putting fresh blood with new perspectives in the pipeline at the beginning because AI is eliminating the need for interns or for recent graduate hires and stuff like that. So good luck. Good luck being a relevant company in 15 years if you have no pipeline other than your own wherewithal. And I think there's a lot of investment where the CEOs who have 25 of the most smartest humans on the planet talking to them, and they think that talking to AI is like that, but they would charge rent for it. And I think there is a collapse that happens. Tooling, we call it dimensional collapse. And so it's like there's a boundary where stuff works, even if it's bad. And there's a point where it tips over into failure or it tips over into irrelevance. And so the fact that when you talk about your 4 dimensions and we have 20, it's still not enough, right? Because there's billions and billions of dimensions to anything. But really, it's just like a meter of tension. And so when you have that collapse happen, who pays the cost? And is it the company? Is it your bottom line? Is it your employees? It's the world? Is it the environment? These are all things that happen when you make choices throughout the day. And for a long time, tech people have been paid a lot for rubber stamping stuff.
Yeah.
And now they're really mad about, like, some of the people I know who are most mad about site coding AI. You weren't there 15 years ago when they came for taxi cab drivers. And you weren't there 10 years ago when they came for content publishers, and you weren't there 5 years ago when they came for union workers. There's worker solidarity and there's all kinds of stuff that are at play. And so this is all in my head when I'm talking to someone and you're like, oh, we really need to get our email into Salesforce. If you have a person doing that, what else do you want them to do instead? Because how do we do 2 birds with 1 stone and get the person realigned? But then if you're trying to save a few bucks that you have to hire someone to do work, then let's bring them on board and train them how to do stuff like this. So they do this and every other little thing that's around.
And then have the dexterity to move around and continue to build on certain skill sets. I think that's the bigger risk I see with the younger generation, is push them into being plumbers and electricians so that they can build data centers. It's a really weird. We need more of these so we can build more of this.
That's one thing I feel good. Like a lot of my teens in my life, one, they're very high stressed. And I feel really bad that they're in this time. Anyone who's a teenager / college age now has not had high school or college in the way that we had it, or anyone's had it in the history of the world, because from COVID to AI has completely destroyed any semblance of progression from a young mind into an adult mind. And that is like a huge loss for us as a society, because on one hand, you have people that I think young people have a very strong sense of social justice and agency and self-advocacy that makes me feel really proud. Like when I see like teenagers standing up to ICE agents and all that stuff, that is super cool. But on the other hand, we have people that they haven't had any sort of like meaningful friction in their life to understand sometimes someone's just a jerk. And what they want is, they are right to ask what they want, but they should be able to like treat me like a human being to ask for it. So there's all this stuff at play in our tech and technology. And I think that is also the other friction. Like we can all be the same kind of person, but we should all be islands of thought in that thing. So even if it's 5 white guys on the board of your tech thing, there's still 5 independent people who have different experiences.
Exactly. I appreciate that. Peter, I heard something from Reid Hoffman, and I think you're somewhat referring to it. He argues that AI should augment humans playing to each other's strengths. I hear some of his, for those that are not familiar with Reid Hoffman, he created LinkedIn and a few other things. But he's kind of part of that whole tech kind of ecosystem. But he believes AI should augment humans, play to each one's strengths. And you described your work as helping clients to use AI to enhance rather than replace human capacity. And you've talked about that a little bit today. You just gave me the example of a little earlier, the insurance broker spending more time with clients. But you've also predicted these massive workforce reductions.
Yeah.
Like both can be true.
The market is irrational. Like you can look at the market today where the stock market goes up when a war starts and all that stuff. It's not attached to, the market doesn't reflect health and safety and well-being of people. And so once you have that on side, then the other second truth is CEOs don't need a reason to lay people off. They'll lay people off because they lost a bet at tennis and whatever in between. What's that? Some sort of behind the scenes bets. Okay, I bet you I'll still meet quarterly projections and I'll lay off 20% of my workers at the ski club. Who knows? So when we talk about that, and of course, like all kinds of things that I think that are separate from that discussion, like you shouldn't have to be employed to have a safe place to live and have medical insurance and all that stuff. It shouldn't be tied to your use of capitalism. your ability to be safe and happy and healthy.
Right.
So you put all that aside, and then we talk about what is AI's role. Computers have a role in society. We have systems and logging, and it's well established the contract between workers and humans, and it's unevenly distributed in different jobs. Some jobs suck and some jobs are great. And I think the problem with AI is that it's trying to homogenize everything into a shared process. And the reason why I think the reason people are like viscerally like against when I say the word AI, which for years was just like algorithms, right? And now it's become a brand that indicates homogeny and corporate control and all that stuff. So like if you said that in the future, everyone's gonna have a personal computer. Like in the 80s, that was controversial. And now it's like pretty much possible, right? Like everyone can have either, and that personal computer could be your cell phone or your laptop or whatever, just wherever you are on the spectrum. You can use that machine to do work. But AI is positing a future where there's grades of technology access and usage. And if the AI is owned by a company, and that's like the thing you need to be a competitive member of the workforce, how much are they going to charge you so you have insurance and a place to live and be happy and safe and healthy? So there's all that social stuff before you even talk about if it works or not. And it doesn't work. And a lot of times it doesn't work is a combination of, I think Americans are really good at the slow roll. Here comes some jerk off with a new policy. He wants us to do 5 times more work. Yeah, we'll do 3.5. We'll see how that works out for him. That is a very American thing to do. The other half of it is going back to the Walmart analogy where these things are a law of averages machine. And so therefore, the less average you are, the less effective it is at doing stuff. And so when we talk about bias in systems, either bias results in, oh, this person can't wash their hands at the sink because the skin color they tested on wasn't as dark as the person who needs to use it. And that's an inconvenience maybe, or maybe a health problem if they're a doctor and they got to wash their hands before surgery. And then in the iron scale, it's like, we're going to flag people getting on the plane because their body type matches a database of criminals. And so like that whole spectrum of things is such a frightening and about a West world, it's hard to like even talk about, oh yeah, it's really cool to use AI to do your spreadsheets because you're immediately in the end of the pool. That's the Black Mirror, Sarah Connor world because no one has said, obviously that's off the table. And none of these tech leaders are like, oh yeah, we're absolutely not going to have those cute robot dogs put a Gatling gun on it and have it patrol in front of the White House. Surprise, they started doing that. And it's just like, someone please just stand up and say enough. And I think that is like where we're at with the tech industry right now, where it's just, I wanted to log in, do 8 hours of work and go home and watch Jeopardy and all this stuff to chill out and maybe spend some time with my kids. And that's the social contract. So you have all these guys who are like hooked on disruption and implications. And then they act bewildered and confused when people are throwing literal Molotov cocktails at their houses. And they've never cracked a book about history in their lives. And they think there's no such thing as self-introspection. And it's like, how do you have a meaningful conversation with people like that? Because it sounds to me like
referring to. That's why I'm not. I'm not gonna say it out loud.
It's comic book villainy.
Classic, yeah.
Like you could go into any Superman comic and what Lex Luthor says and put what tech CEOs say, and it would work as a narrative device. And so, why are these guys the richest people? And why do 5 of these guys own every media outlet in the United States right now? I don't know. And going back to what I do to make money, automating stuff. And so I think I would not take a client if their job is to like, I wouldn't print a money machine because that's alchemy. That's not work. That's lead from gold. And that's just, if you want to pay me a stipend to help you spitball dumb ideas, this podcast is a good example. I can speak extemporaneously about any number of dumb ideas. But if you want me to get aggravated and think hard and spend a lot of time thinking about stuff that you're going to turn down because it doesn't meet your goal of making money versus doing the work properly, then I don't want to work with you. Wow. And I don't think there's a lot of people in tech. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I don't think there's a lot of tech who will fire a client. And I will fire a client because I think if you automate things that are like toxic at scale, all you're doing is being toxic at scale. It's never a capacity problem. It's a scoping problem, or it's a reality discernment problem. And when we talk about having diverse voices, it also is implied that they have diverse opportunities to express their diverse voices. Like you can say, I've been at companies and they've done their year-end things. We are proud to say that our diversity initiatives have increased the diversity of our company a whole 0.5% to 11% people of color in our company. And just in this county alone, Caucasians only make up 27% of the population. You can't even match the regional ratio, and you're proud of that. And there's no interrogation there. There might be a no jerks policy, but there's no shielding from bare naked facts policy.
Reality is a hard pill to swallow. And if you have the ability to not swallow it and still get what you want, you don't ever do it.
Yeah.
I listen to some of these tech CEOs, I was like, there is no reality in what you're talking about. There's no consideration other than what's in front of you at this moment, which is the next investor to give you another 100 to 250 million. Actually, I shouldn't even say million. It's now getting into billions that they're getting, 200 billion and 250 billion, crazy amount. Peter, I'm going to wrap up. You've been doing this conversational AI stuff before we even knew what it was. Like this, if you would have said conversational AI to most people 10 years ago, they'd been like, huh?
Yeah.
Now it's somewhat commonplace, or at least they understand. People think we understand what it means. So you've done this across a lot of different industries. I think I remember you saying, you talked about healthcare at one podcast. You talked earlier about call centers, automation in retail. If you could redesign one AI system from an inclusion lens, when you're thinking about care of people, you're thinking about openness and willing to be influenced by this Devon Street type group, when you're thinking about safety, where people really feel like you have their best interest in mind, even when they're not there to express themselves, and they build trust as a result of that, and designing for humanity. If you had to redesign one AI system from that lens, what would you choose? What would you change? Not hypothetically, but a real that you've seen or that you've built yourself.
And this is speaking to our in-house system spell work. I think every single decision in a decision map, whether it's applying for insurance or booking a flight or whatever, is an execution of a desire or an intent. And that's like conversational AI 101 is, okay, we have intents like book flight, order pizza, and we train the AI to understand that and all the variations of it. But the implications of that is that everything in the world is a wish, is an intent, right? And the intent could be retire by 55, or it could be on the other end of the scale, it could be like revenge on all my enemies or whatever in between. And we are making, and the algorithms right now are like optimized for engagement, right? And not for resolution or for outcome. And so I think what we really need is what is the runtime for arbitrating our desires versus reality? And so like you send an email and then people have a meeting about it and all that. And it's all just like analogs for, hey, can I have more money? No, we don't make enough money. But then there's spectrums and scales and all that. So how do you put that into a system? Right now, enterprise software has all kinds of things for granting you short-term access to proprietary company information, but it doesn't go the other way. If I go to a website and there's a cookie there and it tracks me across every website in the day, and I start getting ads because I talked to my wife about, hey, I need some new pants. And there's all kinds of unequal distribution of like systemic knowledge where I'm just like, I just looked up hammers and now people are calling me on the phone about hammers. And so how do we renegotiate that? And I think it goes back to like at the microphone, we have a little firewall. And the firewall is just, I want a hammer, nothing else. And when you talk earlier about context, that context hydration, you need a lot of context to solve many problems. But on the other hand, you don't. Like if ChatGPT is a language model, what does it care that I said my real name or a pseudonym? So why should I send it all kinds of personal information about myself when it's just doing statistical analysis of potential outcomes against no API? So like, how do we like completely wear like a hazmat suit around us before we go on the internet and share no information? And these are like the tools that we're building internally, where I think you should be able to get access to log into a website based on a credential and a token, just like API servers do. And you shouldn't have to send 185 bits of information about your address and what website and how long you stay there and all that stuff. And so I think there has to be a structural reimagining of the contract of what free and open internet is. And everyone who is against it will be on the outside, and everyone in it is on the inside. And you basically shun the outside world and see how long the chat GPTs and Anthropics of the world have with no new data. Like they need us more than we need them.
Absolutely.
And that needs to be
Let
renegotiated.
me repeat that, Peter. Say that again, because I think it's a good point for us to start coming to a close, but say that again. Like you just said the magic thing that I don't think that we are acknowledging if they don't have any data from what we put on the internet.
If they didn't need us, they would be able to train entirely on open domain data made before the 1800s. They have 30,000 years of human civilization they could have trained it with, but it didn't work because they need constantly new and evolving data because society is not a piece of amber. It's constantly changing. And if you don't feed the machine, it drifts farther and farther into irrelevance. Tech is acting like they are going to be the landlords of the new economy. And it's ridiculous. They're trying to charge admission to air. They're trying to charge admission to like things that are just natural byproducts of society doing what it does. And the internet was open and free for 40 years. And because of that, they had enough data where they can make models. And so if they win, I think eventually they will slide into irrelevance and even worse capability and all that. And what do we do then? And I think we do what we always do. If you go to a bar and it's a cool bar and suddenly a bunch of chuds start hanging out and they ruin the bar and you find a new bar. I've had a live journal. I've had a MySpace. I've had a Facebook. I had a Twitter. I had just make a new account because me and my friends are the attraction, not twitter.com. I think if people look at their attention and their time and had the ability to like I think a lot of also the problem is since we don't control the algorithm, when I talk bad about someone and I praise someone, it occupies the same level of gravity. And so you have people that are obvious villains that we can't stop talking about because half the people are like putting them up and half the people are dunking on them. And when we should just be able to step inside our little bubble and close them off. Like I need as little Elon Musk news as I possibly can get. I have every permutation of his name and his technology and his company's gone because I've never once read something about Elon Musk. I'm like, that's a fact that helped me in my day. Not once. And it's just, and I think like, obviously there's like a threat matrix. Like I want to know what the president's saying so I know if I got to fill up my tank of gas because tomorrow it's going to be twice as much. But 89% of what he says is mentally damaging to me. And so I have to take care when I do stuff. And I think a lot of stuff is like that in technology where they're like saying, oh, you want to be in an echo chamber. It's like, yeah, echo chambers are cool. Every Beach Boy record is full of them. Ronnie Spector sounds great in an echo chamber. There's nothing wrong with avoiding jerks in your day that don't make life worth getting out of bed. Yeah. And I think that is the chief thing about technology in general is it is a tool. And the minute it becomes like the thing in of itself, I find new places to work. I try to get out of there and because it's just, is your job shipping code or making things better the day to day? And I think if you're happy with just like delivering stuff endlessly, one, you're ripe to be replaced because that's automation, right?
Sure.
And two, there's places where you can go to do that. And I don't want to work there. And so I want to help people make things that don't look like that because I think that's a great place for people to work and just enough work to get by and send your kids to school if you want to and all that stuff. I think that is more structurally important to do than to like ship a better way to order pizza with your cell phone or whatever is like the tech industry unicorn story.
Sure. Wow. Peter, is there anything that I did not ask you that I should have?
The other thing is I put it out there. I do a lot of consulting for people who pay me money, but I want to mention anyone's listening to this and we're talking about diversity and inclusion. If you're in a not-for-profit or you're starting out in the industry or whatever, and you need a question answered, I answer all my email. So if you go to toilville.com, go to our contact form, fill it out, I will respond personally and help you out or point you at the right direction. Because I think that's also like the one thing we miss out in being in big companies is that ambient sharing of stuff. And I don't want to just give all my good ideas to people who paid me. I did a startup 10 years ago called BotKit with my colleague, Ben Brown. And a lot of people who started out in this thing, GitHub ranked us consistently as the top 10 new repo for new coders. And a lot of those people since have now like the VPs of so and so. And that is way more rewarding to me than any exit, like having someone's life change because they're able to like, oh, I took 3 months and I read how to do something and I turned that into a job. And now I can like start a company from Botswana and service customers globally and all that because I found something open source.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of things that make being in tech fun and not like exits and like getting unicorn money and turning your Spotify into a defense startup or whatever you want to do. So let's make those people win. And so reach out to me at toilville.com. I do have to pay rent. I have employees, so please call me to hire me. Keep an eye on our website. We are going to release open source tools and community tools to help not only AI usage, but just work process usage work better because we use this internally and there's definitely something there. And I think people should use technology to help them where it makes sense. So reach out to me and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Great. We'll put all of Peter's information in the show notes. And Peter, delightful. There's so much here, and we're going to do lots of clips. I think there were so many gems here today that I want to make sure that people can digest, because some of it I heard the last time, but when I heard it a second time now, because you reframed it, and I was like, oh, that's what he was saying. I'm going to go and listen to it myself several times, and I greatly appreciate it. And folks, I hope you got as much out of today as I did. And I hope you share this podcast with as many people as you can, both in the tech space as well as those outside. Make it a great day. Peace. If you are committed or simply a little bit curious about how to make DEI accessible to everyone, actionable, that is, unambiguously prioritized and sustainable, aligned with personal and organizational purpose, hit the subscribe button. Make it a great day. Peace.